Mark, thank you. Senator Rick Scott will challenge Mitch McConnell for the chamber's top Republican leadership post as allies of the two men trade blame for the party's relatively disappointing performance in the midterm elections, certainly compared to predictions. We're joined by our political panel, Kristen Hawn, partner at ROKK Solutions, and Lisa Camuso-Miller, Republican strategist and former communications director for the Republican National Committee. Both join us now here in our Washington studios. It's great to have you both with us here. When we start talking, Lisa, about Donald Trump, one of the statements he made last night that seemed to blow past everyone was that the House had been called for Republicans. It was 2 weeks ago today that Kevin McCarthy declared victory for the House. It has not been called yet, as a matter of fact. When's that going to happen?
Well, there are definitely races that still need to be decided, and we will wait until the very last vote is counted. That is for sure on both sides of the aisle. What I think, Joe, is the greatest cautionary tale of last night's announcement from Donald Trump is that we cannot make the same mistake. We cannot count him out. He is a threat. In 2015, he was paying for people to come to his rallies. And today, he has announced again last night that he will run. So we need to treat this as what it is. It's a threat, and it's one that we need to continue to pay attention to. The party absolutely needs to move past it, but we have to be cautious about him.
Well, with regard to the leadership battle in the Senate here, this is all coming off of, and in the House actually, Kevin McCarthy isn't sliding into this gavel very easily. How much of this is informed by the results of the midterm elections? Because there aren't that many people challenging this. No one challenging McCarthy. And Rick Scott, who's challenging Mitch McConnell, bears a lot of responsibility for what happened a week ago.
Yes, he absolutely does. And I think that what will happen in January is that we will see that the leadership races will be decided. I think, though, too, this is absolutely informed by the lackluster midterms. It's not terribly interesting to me in that these two names have come up. They will be the leaders. There's absolutely no question that Mitch McConnell will lead the Senate. It's still undecided what will happen in the House. We'll wait and see. But I think the other thing, too, is that voters decided on Election Day what was going to happen. They sent a message to Washington, D.C. They are ready for some predictability. They are tired of the scare tactics, and they are tired of the approach that Donald Trump has brought forward in the party itself.
So, Kristen, what kind of leverage do Democrats have here as everyone comes back to Washington? Ben Cardin was smiling when we had him on because he knows that Democrats keep the Senate. He knows Chuck Schumer will be leader. But there is some business to be had here with regard to same-sex marriage, managing the debt ceiling, funding the government. Will Republicans be forced to work with Democrats even though they will likely control the House?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting because they'll likely control the House, but it'll be a historically, or maybe not
Could be a
ever,
smaller
but
margin
very,
than Nancy Pelosi has.
Yes, it will be a very small margin. And in those instances, for the must-pass legislation, I don't think that there are going to be, any huge legislation happening in the next 2 years. It doesn't need to happen ahead of the presidential election.
Does that include same-sex marriage?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's more of a question for Republicans because the Democrats have passed it in the House. But I think it's really interesting because you have the members who kind of sit in the center left, and a lot of those actually won. So take like the Blue Dog Democrats, a lot of people counted them out. Almost every single one of them won re-election, and they picked up more seats in North Carolina and likely in California. And these are the members that are willing to step across the aisle. They will step across the aisle. And I'm guessing that McCarthy, whoever becomes Speaker, will need to reach across the aisle to work with them.
What does Kevin McCarthy have to do for Matt Gaetz and some of the other outliers who say they would not under any circumstances vote for him as Speaker?
Well, Joe, I have heard from friends of mine on the Hill that have said that every member is asking for everything that they need right now because the leader is in such a difficult position. He will absolutely have to make concessions with every single one of them in order to get them to come over the line. I saw this morning that there are members that are mad at one another for getting behind the leader. It's going to be a lot of games. For those of us inside of Washington, we kind of love the drama. We kind of love to see it play out. But it will be absolutely a very difficult few weeks for Kevin McCarthy.
How about Nancy Pelosi? Kristen, what happens to the current Speaker? Will she retire after this?
I mean, that's always the question, right? And I think I've stopped guessing after 2010.
A lot of people don't think it'll ever happen, but when you consider what's happened to her personally, she says she will be not only affected by that, but will help make her decision based on what happened to Paul.
Right, I mean, and that's really devastating, what's happened. And she's, I know, been, working with the younger leaders of the party, people like Hakeem Jeffries, who are ready to take up and lead. So, but we'll have to see what the Speaker does.
You don't have an expectation on that, huh? Would the caucus be disappointed if that happened? Or is it, there's been a lot of talk about a new generation on both sides of the aisle. Maybe that would be well received.
I think that it's time for a new generation. I also think that there's a lot of support behind the speaker because she listens to her caucus. I mean, she had a very narrow majority and we got a lot done, and it's because she's a bargainer. She makes deals, and her caucus, whether you agree with her all the time or not, they respect her.
What's one thing Kevin McCarthy can learn from Nancy Pelosi if he takes the gavel?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I think the one thing that Kristen mentioned is that the speaker is very good about listening to her caucus. She's thoughtful about making sure that she hears them and works for them. I think the one criticism against the leader is that he has been campaigning for the last 2 years to be speaker in such that people feel as if he has not been leading the way he ought to have been leading, and that's the one knock on him.
Our panel stays with us. Kristen Hawn and Lisa Camuso Miller will be sticking with us on Balance of Power. I hope you do as well, with more ahead on the impact of the midterm elections and what's next for the Republican Party. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg TV and radio.